Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the second annual Veteran Mays Black Alumni Society Recognition Awards, plus a special webinar we have in our ongoing BMBAS series. Our continuing programs highlight different aspects of Bates' successes. Tonight, we're going to be sponsored by the Bates Mosaic Organization. My name is Chuck James. I'm in the class of 1978. By the way, we're recording these sessions. First up, we're going to have a 30-minute webinar with 15 minutes of questions and answer, and then we'll follow with our annual award ceremony. If folks have questions for the panelists, please put them in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the award ceremony, which will be about 8 o'clock, we're going to have an after Zoom. And so I will put that after Zoom address. You have to log into that, into the chat. First, a few things about the Veteran Mays Black Alumni Society. We're a 3-year-old organization. It was formed in honor of Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, a class of 20, and the pioneers who led the way for all students of color, and then followed the path they cleared. The mission of the Mays Alumni Society is to strengthen Bates College by directly addressing the need for sustainable support of its Black alumni and establishing a robust connection and interaction amongst Black alumni, students, faculty, and staff. Tonight, we're going to have our webinar, as I mentioned, and then we're going to take a brief pause for about 4 minutes, and we're going to go into our recognition. The after Zoom event I shared, I'll put into the chat. That'll be about 8 o'clock. And once again, please put questions for the moderator in the chat, in the Q&A, and she'll see them. About our webinar this evening. Award-winning journalist Stephanie Leydon is Bates class of 87. She'll be interviewing Rodney Hines, who's also a class of 87. Stephanie is the director of special projects at GBH News. She recently produced the Newsroom's Covered in the Classroom series, which offered an intimate look at the lives of 3 high school seniors navigating their last year of high school amidst the pandemic. Stephanie joined GBH in 2014 as a reporter and was promoted to senior editor in 2018. Her work is aired on NPR, PRI's The World, and the PBS NewsHour. Before joining GBH News, Stephanie worked as a television reporter and anchor in Boston, Manchester, New Hampshire, and Macon, Georgia. At Bates, Stephanie majored in rhetoric. Entrepreneur Rodney Hines grew up in Philadelphia. He graduated from Bates and went into nonprofit grassroots work in inner cities. He has keen interest in the history plus results of inequality and social justice. The community has always been most important to Rodney, whether going to church with his family or brewing beer with his buddies. The people he keeps in contact influence his moral compass. It was only natural that a love of community, passion for social change, and affinity for brewing, which began after college, it led him to owning his own company. He started brewing beer in his early 20s. Before brewing his beer, he worked at Microsoft and Starbucks. He knows what it's like to make significant changes as an employee inside a big company. He co-founded Metier in 2018. With Metier, he wants to produce damn good beer and build a stronger community and inspire bigger dreams. Metier brews 13 beers year-round, including the award-winning American Wheat and Coconut Porter, with a few other brews made in collaboration with local breweries. Metier recently collaborated with 2 times James Beard Award-winning chef Eduardo Jordan, a celebrated Black chef making waves in the culinary world. Stephanie and Rodney, thank you for your time. Stephanie, the microphone is yours.
Chuck, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's absolutely an honor to be here, celebrating the legacy of one of Bates's most important graduates and celebrating the success of one of my favorite graduates, my old dear friend, one time across the hall neighbor at Page Hall, Rodney Hines. Hey, Rodney, so good to see you.
So good to see you, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks, Chuck.
Looks like you're at Metier.
I am here.
Wow. Okay. How's it going? I mean, is it back? Are people back? Is the community back after a couple of tough years for all of us?
Yeah, it's interesting. I suspect for those folks who have retail spaces anywhere in the US and possibly around the world, you felt like members of the community never went away. I mean, I think what helped many of us get through COVID was the love and support of our communities. And so we're still here, and part of our community is the strength that comes from the support of other small businesses, particularly Black and Brown businesses. I mean, we supported each other throughout this whole piece. And so, yeah, the community is, it's starting to really feel like everyone wants to get out. I mean, spring is here, and people just want to come out and have fun and hang in cool spaces. So, community is back.
What could be cooler than your space, Rodney? I mean.
Yeah. Well said, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you. That's why they picked you, Rodney. Okay, start with the name, because Metier it's cool. Sounds kind of French, but tell us about the meaning.
So Metier, the literal translation for Metier is vocation. The more poetic translation of Metier is one's calling, one's destiny. And so whenever I talk about the origin, and you'll stop me as you would in any conversation if I'm going ahead and jumping to question 2, 3, or 4. But when I think of the first thing I think about when we go from our name is to what do we stand for? And you can't see it, but I'm looking over to it. The first thing you see when you walk into our space is our mission statement. And Chuck referenced it. Our mission here is to brew damn good beer and build stronger community to inspire bigger dreams for all. And if I break it down, and I'll take 2 seconds just to break it down. When I break down the mission, if you own a business, you know that you can't do anything unless you have good product. So damn good beer. Building stronger community, that's important to us on multiple different levels. It's what you've already spoken to in terms of community and in being embraced by the community. It also is how are we supporting our local community, and a real issue and concern, and something that sort of fueled us is when we started this business, we were one of less than 50 Black-owned breweries in the country out of nearly 9,000. There were about 20, at the time we opened, there were about 20 women-owned breweries in the country. And so from the beginning, we said that we need to be a part of the change that will push this industry to be more reflective of America. And so we just recently launched a mentorship program for women and people of color to get into this industry. The last part of the mission statement, inspiring bigger dreams for all. It's, for me, and I suspect for many, we know that it's obvious that we all have the capacity of the dream, but we know that there are ceilings placed on many of us in our dreams. And we call BS on that. Everyone should have the opportunity to dream as big as possible. And so we want to fuel and grow our community so that we can inspire bigger dreams for everyone.
Rodney, when we met, I think we were 18 years old. We were freshmen at BASE. Yeah, scary. We've known each other a couple of years. And then years after, right? When you lived in Boston and I was in and out of this area, I'm still in Boston, we hung out a lot. And I would not necessarily have predicted that you would become a brewery entrepreneur, but to hear you talk about community, to hear you talk about inspiring people, to hear you talk about breaking down barriers, providing opportunity, it just feels like what you've been up to from the get-go. It feels like that's always been part of you. And I wonder if it feels that way to you too. Have you just, has this path been about, and we have to get into your many stops along the way to Metier, but has this path been to some degree just about following what's inside of you? Because when I think of you at Bates, I do think of you as a connector, as someone on campus who people knew, who people felt comfortable around, and who connected. You connected us to one another, I think, in many levels.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, what is it that all Batesies have in common? Like, I think that my morals, my values were in place by my family. And I feel like at Bates, we had the opportunity to strengthen, challenge, deepen, and develop those values and mores. And I do, like, I remember we were dealing with the apartheid in South Africa. And I remember protesting and being a part of that when we were in college. So I think of the history of Bates and who founded Bates and who was always admitted to Bates. And I think that those are some of the fundamental reasons of why I chose to go to Bates. But I think those mores that Bates helped sort of continue to develop, because Bates didn't give us mores and values. I mean, we had them. I think Bates helped us clarify and to grow them and to deepen them. But one of the experiences I had was my short term with Ned Harwood, art history, in London. And we had classes in pubs. I remember seeing a Chekhov play in a pub. And I had this, it was like this light bulb went off that, social change, art, dialogue, discourse, learning can happen in a public space like a pub. And I think that always stuck with me. And so I feel like there were different nuggets along the way that helped formed in my career, helped refine what that is. And it got me to this place of where I'm standing.
Okay, one thing I remember very clearly, we should back up just a bit. You were a psychology major.
Yep.
What has that been something, has that major, that experience, that academic experience played into your journey, or has it not? I mean, because sometimes a liberal arts education, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how it plays out, exactly how it benefits you going forward. But I wonder if majoring in psychology played a role.
No, I think I guess the one most concrete thing that came through with psychology is every summer when we were at Bates, I don't know if you remember this, but I did an internship every summer.
You stayed during the summer. Best part of the year up there, really.
Can you hear me okay? We're actually cleaning tanks right now.
Oh, I was wondering what that noise was.
We're brewing.
We hear both you and the tank cleaning, yes.
Yeah. So I did an internship every summer to figure out what was my place in psychology. And I think through that, I worked with kids along the spectrum. I worked with kids with learning disabilities. And I think where I landed at the end of the Bates career was, I think I'm curious about organizations and the dynamics of organizations and the psychology of organizations. And so that put me on that path. So Bates did help me do that. But I also think fundamentally, one skill that a significant skill that I think we gained is critical thinking. Like, I remember I took a few rhetoric classes, and I remember the rhetoric classes and the English classes and all the others. And I really do think that the ability to really stop and think critically and analyze, that's a skill set that liberal arts colleges, it's a gift from liberal arts colleges in that education.
Here's one thing I remember as we were getting ready to graduate, and this must have played into the work you'd been doing, and I think it played into some of your coursework. We were doing new games. Do you remember that? You said we're going to play new games.
Yeah.
And the new games were fun. I don't exactly remember what they were.
That was my thesis.
Well, okay, it was. It was.
Yeah, that was my thesis. I'm glad it was such a memorable thing.
It was.
Stephanie. It was my thesis, yes.
It was memorable. We were outside, we were playing games. I had no idea it was your thesis. If I knew I forgot. Maybe I knew at the time. Okay. And I feel like we continued to play new games because your first job, as I recall, was at City Year.
Yeah.
Right? That was your first spot.
It was probably one of the most significant first jobs. Yeah, before that, I was an assistant dean of admissions at Wheaton College.
Oh, I've forgotten that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I believe it was when you were at City Year, which was then, I think, what we would now call a startup, right? It's sort of an urban Peace Corps. That's sort of a shortcut way of describing it.
Yeah.
With a lot of community engagement. And I remember coming out for one of your volunteer events, and I think there were new games yet again.
There were.
You have to play games.
Yeah.
So has that been a through line? Are there always games where you go, Rodney?
Isn't life a game, Stephanie? No.
Yeah, but
The
some games are more fun than others.
some games are more fun. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's actually that's a good reminder. So the thesis was about new games and the impact of growing and developing teams. And that was when I was beginning to think about work dynamics and how do you grow teams and develop teams. And I don't think since City Year, probably on and off, I've done a lot of consulting work, and probably for some of my consulting work back a couple of years ago, I was doing some new games. But I actually am curious about the principles of new games, and as I build my team, could they be useful? Thanks for the reminder.
See?
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone's going to start having some fun out there at Metier. They can thank me. I'll come out and they can serve me a beer. And I just want to say the other thing, Rodney, that doesn't surprise me is that you've got award-winning beer. And I know if I came out there, you'd serve me a damn good cup of coffee too.
Oh, yeah, I would. Mhm.
I
Yep.
know that about you. You would not
Yeah.
disappoint. I know that at your brew pub, I would get great coffee, great beer, because that's how we roll. And often on bikes, right?
Yes.
And biking is a big component of this too, isn't it? Cycling?
Yes. So this is our new logo, and the logo might take people a minute to figure it out, but it's got the symbol of Seattle with the space needle. This is a crank over here. That's for a bicycle crank. And then over there,
the chain goes around, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that was so technical of you. That's good. And then over here is a bike seat and the handlebar. And then here's the happy face and the heart with the lip because it enjoys the damn good beer. But cycling, yeah, when we open.
Yeah, how's that incorporated? Sorry.
So my business partner, he's a cyclist. He's actually trained some competitive cyclists across the US and around the world. And when we opened our doors, and I'm a cyclist, when we opened our doors, right before we opened our doors, I had volunteered with an organization here called the Major Taylor Project. They're actually Major Taylor groups across the US, and it gets lower income kids into cycling. And it's founded after Major Taylor, who was a world-class cyclist back in 1890s into early 1900s, was sort of unimaginary and just amazing about Major Taylor is if you think about the 1890s, that's only about 30 years removed from emancipation. And he's a Black man cycling around the world. And this is based on the image of him from the 1900s. But this is a beer that we produce that supports the Major Taylor program here. But what I was saying earlier is before we opened our doors, this might not surprise you. I was late for registering for this ride. This is annual ride from Seattle to Portland. I had done all the training, and then my buddy is like, "Have you registered? Have you gotten everything for registration?" And I looked at him, I was like, "There's a registration expected for this thing?" And what I learned was to actually do the race, I could volunteer. And I volunteered with the Major Taylor program, and that's how I learned about them. And I was blown away. I cycled for 2 days from Seattle to Portland, 150 miles plus, with these kids. Some of them had never been on bikes before. Wow. Many of them were from new immigrant families, and I was humbled and I walked away thinking I got to do more to support this program and these kids. So hence we support it through this beer.
That's extraordinary, and it pays to do things last minute, right?
Yes, thanks.
This is the good that comes from it. I think that I was in solidarity with you for 4 years doing papers last minute.
I think we did. That was our bond. Yeah.
Among other things.
Yeah.
Rodney, before Metier, you had just such an amazing career. City Year brought you to Chicago. Eventually you moved into community organizing. Was that in Chicago, the community organizing?
City Year, when I was with City Year, it was only 2 cities, so Boston and Providence. And when I came on board, I helped them look through, they're working with Bain Consulting and others, but I helped them with the expansion across the US. So hiring the teams to go across the US and training. And at some point, I wanted to be a part of how do you launch a city for City Year. And so I was the one person on the ground in Chicago doing the grassroots organizing to build the groundswell of welcoming for us to go to Chicago. And then I did the same for Seattle. And then eventually I felt removed from the day-to-day operations. And I said for my last role with the organization, I wanted to be a team leader working with a group of young people on the south side of Chicago. So that was my last role. But so the grassroots organizing was a part of City Year. And then when I came out to Seattle, I worked with a public policy firm, and much of my work there was around Seattle. Washington State was one of the first states towards advancing universal health care. And so I worked on that legislation, and I worked around the development of AmeriCorps across the state and evaluation of those programs and various other things.
So you were a community organizer. You say community organizer and you say Chicago, and my mind goes to the former president, Barack Obama, who we all know was a community organizer. And I do wonder, because it was about the same era, did you cross paths?
With Barack, with President Obama, no, but at that time, Michelle Obama was running a program called Public Allies in Chicago. And she was one of the first stops I had to make in talking to local community leaders in Chicago. And I actually told her this story years later when I was with her at a meeting at Starbucks. But the story was I went to her office, just she and me in the office. I don't think she really had a full team. And I got a lesson on how to humbly and gracefully enter the community of Chicago because of the rich history of there, because of the nonprofit, the organizations there. But Michelle, my one-on-one with Michelle Obama was truly about humility, doing this correctly. And I really spent like an hour listening intently to Michelle Obama. I told her years later that she schooled me, and she really did. Yeah.
In terms of how to approach a community that you are new to?
How to be respectful. If you look at City Year was a pretty well established and beloved organization out of Boston at the time. And it had it was loved by Clayton and various others. And so, going into a community and not being a part of coming out of the community, rather than, coming from Boston, she was giving me advice on how to respectfully enter Chicago, which actually it was necessary, it was needed, and it helped inform my strategy of how we opened up in Chicago.
Wow. So in some ways, Michelle Obama was a mentor for you.
That's interesting.
Or at least an advice giver.
It's funny because when we were thinking about this, I was thinking about mentors. And as we were thinking about this session, and I was thinking about the importance of finding mentors and what role mentors play. But I also think there's something about the fixed person that's a mentor and the mentoring conversations you might have if you're really attuned and listening to those conversations. And you're right, I hadn't thought about it, to be honest, but I think in that moment with Michelle Obama, that was a mentoring developmental conversation for me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you learned something from her. Yeah. We do some of that now at GBH, and we call it listening sessions. Rather than going in and saying, hey, we're going to do the story, we're trying to go in and listen, to the community and let the community inform us. And that just that approach just sort of reminds me of what you're describing.
It's, what's interesting when you say that, it sounds simple in terms, but I think for many of us, it might be the hardest thing to do is just to shut up and to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, especially as we get older, Rodney, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
We think we know the ropes.
Yeah. Well, you and I do.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to remember that. Calling you when I need a boost, Rodney. Once a week anyway. But here we are. We both had time, right, to experience things, to figure things out, to get someplace. But it's talk about how you have kind of gone from one thing to the next, decided when it's the right time to make a change, and then had the confidence to do that. Because I think looking from the outside, like, here's this guy who's had this amazing career with these big corporations, now is an entrepreneur. And for someone just starting out, I think that looks very daunting. Can you break it down a little bit? How does that happen incrementally? And is it about knowing when to make a change?
I think it is about knowing when, and I think often we delay what we already know. I think early on in my career, and I mean, when it wasn't a career, I mean, coming out of Bates, there was a lot of networking that was necessary. And I heavily dependent on the career center at Bates. So like I think the first job I went after was at Unum Insurance. I don't even know if that still exists. And it was through an alum at Bates, from Bates, who talked with me about Unum. I got to the point of like, that was not what going into insurance they got. I'm like, sorry, anyone in insurance, but
For you.
yeah, it was not the path. But I remember going back to the network and looking at who else can I talk to. It's funny, a few years after Bates, maybe a couple of years after Bates, before I moved to Chicago, Mark Crommett, an alum, he was in my freshman group when I was a JA. And he was already out here in Seattle, and he was working for Starbucks. And he actually tried to convince me at that point to look at Starbucks. I'm like, dude, you're working for a little coffee shop. And by the way, if that coffee shop comes in my neighborhood in Boston, I'm coming after you, which eventually I did. But so Mark was someone who, I followed his path and sort of just stayed in touch with him. When I first looked at spending some time in the Northwest, I got back in touch with Mark, and I'm like, can I come and hang? And we went for a bike. We just rode around Portland and Seattle. But I consider him as a part of the network that helped me sort of think about where was I coming to, not necessarily what's the job I'm coming to. But it was the network that was so critical. It's probably one job that I applied code for in the last 25 plus years. And that was for Microsoft. I think it's interesting. I'm going to the question of what were the moments of pivot when I knew it was time. So I was working for a public policy firm. My boss for that firm was about to go off and be deputy mayor for Seattle. I knew in my gut that I didn't want to work for the city. And so I was not going with him to the city of Seattle. And he and I shared an office, and we were having conversations about these young millionaires that were leaving Microsoft, and they were looking to support various causes and going to nonprofits. And on the other side, I had my friends who were running nonprofits at the time, and my friends were talking about this culture clash of these millionaires trying to make their nonprofits run like a Microsoft. And I thought I had enough bravado from our liberal arts education. It's like I felt like I think Bates gives you that bit of a pride that you can do almost anything. I mean, if you can survive a winter in Maine, you should be able to do anything.
I like that, Rodney. I think
it's
you're
true.
Right. You walk out of there thinking you could. Why is that? But
you can conquer the world. Yeah. And so when I had in my mind and talking to my boss at the time about what was happening at Microsoft, I'm like, I think I'm going to apply for a job at Microsoft. Never worked in a big corporation, sorry. And I applied.
That brings us out in you, Rodney. I know.
It's you. So I applied to be the director of U.S. Community Affairs for Microsoft. The only job I applied for at the time, and I shocked myself, I got the job. And what was neat about it, and it's funny, what I don't know, I was actually thinking about this recently, it's like, I don't know if my network helped me. I can't recall if my network helped me at the time. What was fascinating is that I worked for the guy who was running community affairs globally for the company, had also been deputy mayor. And so I went from working for one guy who had been deputy mayor once, was about to be deputy mayor again, to working for this guy. And part of me thinks they must have had conversations, and that was part of my entree. So I got a feeling that my network, even unbeknownst to me, has helped me.
Right. The connections you make.
Yeah. And then I think at Microsoft, a quick thing is the next pivot. At Microsoft, I actually began to question corporate philanthropy and what's the depth of corporate philanthropy. And I looked at Starbucks, and Starbucks was doing a lot more around environmental practices, how they source, supporting coffee farm workers. And I decided that, all right, I think I'm done with corporate philanthropy. And I went to Starbucks saying, I want to help you do economic development and all this other work, but I don't want to do corporate philanthropy. And that was good for me for a few years until I was asked to take on all of it.
The job got bigger than you wanted.
The job began at some point. One of my last roles at the company was to oversee the Starbucks Global Community Foundation, its global community programs. And I thought I was leaving philanthropy, but how we did it at Starbucks, it made sense. Yeah.
And there's,
Am I getting long-winded responses to your short questions?
I love your long responses, and my questions are actually long too. So that I think I'm begging for them. How has your work, especially at Microsoft and Starbucks, played into what you're doing now? I mean, some people, we talked about sort of how a liberal arts education is both amorphous and empowering. But you could have gone, I suppose, and studied entrepreneurship and landed somewhere. And I wonder if you got a different sort of education in your corporate roles that has played into what you're able to do now in terms of running a business on your own. Very different than working for someone.
Yeah. So I don't run it on my own. I've got a smart team. In fact, I think the in-laws of my head of research and development, they're also Bates alum. So the Wellborns, if you're here, hi. But I've got a smart team, and I think one lesson that may take many of us a while to learn is that you can't go at it alone, and you've got to be able to trust others to be with you on this journey, and empower others to be with you. And I think part of what we do here is born out of what I was able to do at Starbucks. One of my last roles at Starbucks, and something I got recognition for from Fast Company magazine, which was cool. One of my last jobs at Starbucks was to develop this economic development model where we would open up stores in lower income communities. But what I pushed on was to make certain that the churches, the mayors, the community development organizations embraced and welcomed us into those communities. And we had each of those stores were built by women and folks of color. And for me, that was important because I was pushing the company to make more commitments to diverse suppliers and bringing in women and BIPOC contractors to build these stores, but then once they're in the pipeline, they're approved to be vendors for Starbucks. So that was a part of my strategy, is like helping through this model of economic development in these community stores to really change how Starbucks does business, to give them the entree. But with that, with those stores, we built, when I left the company, we built about 20 across the US. I think there's a commitment now to do I think they're trying to do over 100, maybe 1,000. But we had, what we tested with that model was, first we tested, could we do profit sharing? Could we go into a community, work with a community development organization and have them own some of the profits if they help drive traffic to those stores? We built out training centers within those stores, because when I dug into it and I talked to nonprofits that were doing job development skills for young people, they said that the one skill set young people were missing was customer service. And I'm like, I think Starbucks has got customer service. And so we created the curriculum and invited nonprofits into these created training centers within these stores. But I looked at all of what we were doing in terms of that strategy. We created some interesting research tools with what we were doing. And I actually worked with other businesses, retailers, to see what they could model after what we did at Starbucks. And at some point at Starbucks, we considered, could we make Starbucks, or a portion of Starbucks, a B Corp, a benefit corp? So I took all of that work there, and I'm hoping that I brought some of the best of those lessons from that career, that moment in my career, to what we're doing here. So we looked at many of those things.
It sounds like there's such a parallel. right? Because this is not about just selling beer. Metier is it's so much more in terms of being in the community. And you're expanding, correct?
We are expanding. Yeah.
He sighs. Deep breath and a sigh.
Yeah. In the next month, we're going to be opening up our flagship in the historically African-American community here in Seattle. And I'm bringing on a chef who has his own business, Umami Kushi. It's Japanese street food, African-American guy. He's going to be our in-house chef. And we're looking to develop a major tiller program nearby at the local school. The project is being built by a Black contractor. The artwork, everything else about it, all of our cans that we produce are by BIPOC artists. So we're trying to do as much of that as possible with a new location. And then after we get that open, we're working with the MLB team here, the Mariners baseball team, and we're opening up a brew pub across from our stadiums. And it's dedicated to the Negro baseball team that was here in Seattle in the 1940s. So those two big things are coming.
Extraordinary. That's amazing. And it sounds like a lot of work and potentially extraordinary payoff in terms of, right, doing what you want to do in that community.
It's interesting. It's funny, the pause, and I suspect you're the same when I look at your career and what you've done. It feels like a lot, but I still continue to ask myself, am I doing enough? And to be honest, I never have been able to answer it and say yes. Like I just feel like, I think about you, and I think you're one of the most inquisitive people I know. I fear the day that I'm not inquisitive. I fear the day that I'm not asking questions. And so, in addition to doing these businesses, I feel the responsibility to serve on local boards, both nonprofit and corporate boards. So I feel like there's still more to be done. Yeah,
there always is.
Yeah.
And especially the more involved you are.
Yeah.
I think the more you're going to see. Rodney, if a young person from Bates who's a student now or graduate, or maybe isn't so much of a young person, was interested in your path or something about what you've done, and they kind of reached out to you cold, how would you respond?
Just last week, or about a week and a half ago, I had someone reach out to me who was an alum, graduated a year ago, and she had a couple, but she's trying to figure out a path, and she's thinking about social entrepreneurialism and was questioning getting her MBA. And so, but she just reached out via LinkedIn. And so I think all of our schedules get a little crazy, but I didn't get here, as I said at the start of this, I talked to alum, I still continue to talk to alum. So I think I am where I am because of those conversations. And I have a responsibility to do the same for other young people. So I think just reaching out, and it may just be that people need to be patient, but reaching out, and I'm available to chat with anyone who's along this journey. And I have a particular interest in folks who are thinking about going into business. And even if they're not thinking about the role of business in our society, the fact that they're going into business, I want to help ensure that they're thinking about the responsibility of business. If they're further along and are already thinking about the responsibility of business, I would love to be a part of conversations to help them navigate where they go, because I think that's necessary to have people who are thinking more socially minded, bigger in purpose, bigger in outcomes and metrics in terms of the purpose of business.
One of the things I remember very clearly, Rodney, and so I kind of just love that you are where you are and you're making such a big impact there. I do remember at Bates, you saying that you wanted to live in Seattle. Do you remember that?
No, did I really say that?
Yes,
Really?
You always had Seattle on. Yes, that was absolutely a destination. And I guess you don't remember. I was going to ask, what it was about Seattle. And you ended up there, so there must have been something about Seattle that drew you there. And I'm wondering if in what ways it met those expectations, or in what ways it has changed as maybe your expectations have changed. I'm wondering about you in Seattle, because it's perfect that you're there, except you're kind of far from me anyway, but.
Yeah, that's smart. It's funny. I think when I first came out here to Seattle, I was probably in my late 20s, and all I did was bike around. And well, actually, maybe it wasn't when I biked around. When I came out here later and I was doing the grassroots organizing to start for a city year, I had access to the mayor's office. I was meeting with various folks here, city council members and others, and I saw that there were other young people like myself at the time. And I had this moment of like, whoa, I could be a part, I have access, I could be a part of change as a young person. And that was what was really appealing to me. And I think, so that was kind of it. I think it was what was possible with Seattle. And I get frustrated with Seattle at times. I think we stay in a bubble of a comfort zone. And with some of the news that's coming out nationally, I don't mind my little bubble, but we have the comfort of this bubble zone. But I also have this, I fear that Seattle, we become provincial and we're not thinking as big as what is possible for all of what and who exists here. We got, Microsoft, Boeing, Starbucks, all these major companies. And so it feels like this could be a world-class city. Hopefully an elected official from Seattle isn't listening to this right now. But so that's where my frustration is, and I'm not gonna run for office, but I feel the need to help push for the vision of what Seattle could become. Sorry.
Hang on, I just want to let our audience know we have only a couple of minutes. So if there are questions, I should have said this earlier, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. We'll try to get to them. But the Q&A rather than the chat for questions.
Oh my God, you look like such a journalist with the pen and
yeah.
That was so good.
Oh, thank you. Did you,
Yeah,
you like
really
that?
Good. Yeah.
It's probably chewed on the end, Rodney. Oh, I can be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, it's Rodney, it's so much, I think, since the pandemic, and people have really, I think, thought more deeply about the divisions in this country and the inequities in this country. And it seems like you've been ahead of the curve the whole time. You've been working on these things, these issues, really throughout your career. You have been thinking about providing opportunity and leveling the playing field, because I think that's what you're saying. When there's the opportunity with all this wealth that exists, and opportunity that exists in these incredible corporations, there must be a way to bring others who have been left out up. And it seems like that has really been part of your work always.
Yeah, I think it's that's one of those things that those values and morals that we get from our parents from growing up. I think that was instilled by my parents at a young age. It's funny. My mom was in her late 80s, and I remember calling her one day. It was when Obama was running for the first time. And she told me that she was downtown Philly and she didn't like the way one of the people getting signatures was asking for signatures. So she went over and schooled the young person on how to get signatures for a petition. And I'm like, oh, okay, that might be where I get it from. I have this thing. So I've had this conversation. A good friend of mine, Rob Rush, he's a year behind us. Rob and I have talked about, I remember one time, this is making me vulnerable. One time I called Rob and I'm like, am I depressed? Like I was questioning if I was feeling depressed, if I was depressed. And I was talking about what was happening in the world. And Rob told me that if your eyes are open, if you're paying attention to what's going on, it's hard to not be depressed. And this was like a decade ago. And I do think that I fear and I hope that more people sort of wake up and look at what's going on and they question it. And when they question it, they question what's their responsibility to address it. Like I think about the homeless the homeless situation that we have here in Seattle, and it's significant on the West Coast. And you just walk by people all the time, and it's like at some point you got to say, "What's my role?" Are people trying to ask us questions?
Oh,
So
we do have one. Yeah, there's one in the chat. Good eye. And then we're about to run over.
okay,
Really looking forward to meeting you. Thanks for your wonderful approach to the neighborhood. Do you ever come to San Juan Island? Great brewery here. We could visit. This sounds like a Seattle person. San Juan
this is
Island.
very yeah. San Juan Island is beautiful. That's one of the places I like to go up to escape. And I have had the beer, but I'm gonna look you up. I want a beer up in San Juan. Yes.
Great. Rodney, too much to talk about, too little time. It's just amazing to connect and to get to catch up like this. I'm really grateful to be part of this, and thank you for inviting me along.
This is fun. I love that the Alumni Association gave us the opportunity to connect and have more conversations than this one. So thank you, Bates, but it's really good to see you, Stephanie.
Coming up for a coffee and a beer, Metier Brewing. Rodney Hines, take good care.
You too.
We'll send it back now to the panel.
We'll just get right going here. Someone could put themselves on mute. That would be great. It's an interesting time for us. And I just think in terms of some careful instruction that I got in the middle of the global pandemic and everything else that was going on. And that was to know the difference between complicated and complex. And I'm not sure that I figured that out, but I do know that during this time, I did depend, and we all depend on each other to get through it. I'm reminded that the Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society was started August 17th, 2019, at a meeting with Carol and David Boone. It also reminds me that 100 years ago, Dr. Mays graduated in May of 1920 after another global pandemic. That was absolutely unbelievable that 100 years later, we would find ourselves in similar circumstances, but more prepared and better developed to deal with these types of things as a Bates community. Ironically, the Bates community is strong and well. The last week here, we actually honored President Clayton Spencer with a leadership award from the Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society. And I want to thank her publicly for her leadership in guiding Bates, and particularly all the things that she's had to deal with to keep us a thriving community. Also, I want to just acknowledge Jaleesa and Eliza for helping us put this on in conjunction with Mosaic. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. As a transition here, I'd like to introduce President Clayton Spencer and have her say a few words from Bates College.
Thank you, Ben. I can't see myself. Can you all see me?
Yes.
Okay. So you can, I look like I'm supposed to look on Zoom?
Yes, ma'am, we got you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thanks. So thank you, Ben, for that generous introduction and for my wonderful award, which really means a great deal to me. The absolute first thing I did after deciding to come to Bates was to pick up Benjamin Mays' Born to Rebel autobiography, which really like blows your hair off your face. It is so authentic and such an important book. So I could not be more honored to receive this recognition from the Ben Mays Alumni Society. Let me also say thank you to Chuck and Stephanie and Rodney for that wonderful program that we just finished. I love the fact that Stephanie and Rodney were such good friends that I feel like we were just listening in to a delightful catch up between friends. And what else is college and community for? But I also love the fact that Rodney's whole life has been about looking for ways to build stronger community, and that completely matches the mission of the Benjamin Bates Society, which is meant to create sustainable support for Black alumni and robust connections to campus constituencies, students, faculty, and staff. And that's the mission of the Benjamin Bates Society, but it also is fundamental to the mission of Bates, because we exist to provide the transformative education of a liberal arts college in community to every student we admit. When we admit a student, and this is a good time to talk about it because yesterday was May 2nd when our new class closed in admissions. So with landing right on our fabulous numbers from a record year. But what we are doing when we offer someone admission to Bates is saying to them, we know you have talent. We know you will contribute while you're at Bates, and we know you will go on to do wonderful things that are meaningful to you and make a contribution. So I feel like the Benjamin Mays Society is a living, breathing example of the kind of organic and authentic community that we try to nurture on the Bates campus. And if there are any students, and certainly any groups of students who are not invited to participate in that at a fundamental level, we're not doing our job. And we know there are ways. We still have a lot of barriers to dismantle, but you guys stand as a shining example of having a positive and forward-looking attitude while also taking a hard look at what we need to do better. And I think of you as the best kind of sort of touchstone for where we're falling short, and also cheerleaders willing to put your own labor and your own attention to making the experience of current Bates students better. And as I say to my kids all the time, the greatest gift you can give anybody is your attention and your labor. You are doing that for Bates, and I could not be more grateful. So with that, let me turn the program back to Ben, and I can't wait to see the award ceremony.
Thank you, President Spencer. It's an honor to have you here and watch you do what you do. I'm actually going to turn it over to Eric Obang, who will lead us into the recognition of our wonderful awardees. Eric?
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, President Spencer, for your kind words. I always enjoy being strategically positioned right after you speak. But nonetheless, the show will go on, and very excited to welcome all of you to the second annual Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society Awards. My name is Eric Obang, class of 2007, and it is my distinct pleasure to be able to introduce you all to not only some great alumni, but some great alumni who also will be fostering the legacy of many of the people who we'll be honoring today, as well as give you a glimmer into some of the individuals with which we are going to be highlighting. And to kick things off, we are going to be hearing from alumni. They'll be introducing three distinct awards. We'll have the Henry Chandler Legacy Award, the Benjamin Mays Alumni Society Outstanding Senior Award, and the Stella James Distinguished Service Award. And I will not go into all the details because our wonderful alum will be highlighting those awards as well as the recipients. What you will not hear us awarding today is the Carol and Dave Boone Award for the Outstanding Alumni of Color, who we give out that award every other year. So stay tuned for next year to hear who's going to be awarded for that. But without further ado, I will hand things off to Chuck James to start things off and highlight the Henry Chandler Legacy Award. Over to you, Chuck.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate that. Folks, The Henry Chandler Legacy Award, it recognizes the Black alumni who paved the way for African Americans during the first 100 years of integration at Bates College, which was 1870 to 1970. This award was established in the name of Henry Chandler. He was a class of 1974. He was born a free man. He was the first African American graduate from Bates College. Our awardee is Judge Michael Clay Bolden. Mike Bolden was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He spent his early childhood years in Camden, New Jersey, and later moved to Cherry Hill. He graduated from Cherry Hill High School in '71. He attended Bates and graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts in Government in 1975. While at Bates, he received 12 varsity letters for his participation in football, indoor track, and outdoor track. Mike was my shot put mentor. He beat me too. He used to beat me. Judge Bolden was appointed as an Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court by Governor Mitt Romney in 2005. He's currently assigned to the West Roxbury Division. Judge Bolden served as the first Justice of the Charlestown Division and most recently the South Boston Division of the BMC. Prior to his appointment to the bench, he had served as Commissioner of the Department of Youth Services. Judge Bolden spent the bulk of his legal career as a state prosecutor in Middlesex, Suffolk, and Norfolk counties. He also served as a federal prosecutor with the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts. Judge Bolden is a 1978 graduate of Suffolk University Law School. He serves as an adjunct professor of the law school faculty. He continues to mentor law school students, many of them of Batesies. A few of them are on this broadcast. Mike is married to Tracy A. West Bolden, a lawyer and director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at a national law firm. They have 2 children, Nicholas, an MD, PhD candidate at the University of Massachusetts, Worcester, and Allison, a senior at Loyola University in Baltimore, Maryland. It's great pleasure that we award Judge Michael C. Bolden the Henry Chandler Legacy Award. I'd like to now turn to Karen Boone Mazzoni, class of 2007.
Congratulations, Judge Bolden. The second recipient of the Henry Chandler Legacy Award goes to Nathaniel Erin Boone, Bates class of 52, more affectionately known as Uncle Nate. Hello, Uncle Nate and Aunt Harriet. As the eldest surviving African-American graduate of Bates College, Nate Boone's story is one of endurance and determination. One of 5 children, a deceased father, and a mother who couldn't afford higher education. At 18, Nate capitalized on the GI Bill to achieve his goal of going to college, graduating from Bates in '52 and then BU Law School in 1956, and then going on to open his law practice in Hackensack, New Jersey in 1969. Nathaniel Boone chose the Marines because they had the best uniforms, but the best uniform was not much solace for a Northerner having to sit in the back of the bus once he arrived in our nation's capital at the age of 18 and transit to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Montford Point was where Nate and other Black Marines were segregated and were the first African-American military unit in the US. Most described it as a rattlesnake-infested swamp, and then there were the white officers and enlistees whose venom was probably worse. But Nate kept his vision intact of a college education. In June of 2012, the Montford Point Marine was bestowed the highest civilian award, the Congressional Gold Medal. In 2017, the state of Vermont, his home since retirement, February 17th was named Nathaniel Boone Day. Hardworking and community-focused, Nate volunteered as a Bates class agent and docent at Hildene, the Manchester summer estate of Robert Todd Lincoln. He also served there as chairman of the Board of Trustees. Together with his wife, Harriet, Bates class of 52, Nate's legacy includes his hard work and determination to make something of himself, his dedication to his community and his family, who exemplify his work ethic and achievements. Son, Peter Boone, an orthopedic surgeon. Daughter, Daryl Boone, class of 82, retired head librarian, Harvard University, and his 3 grandsons. The next award will be presented by Amani Bogan, and Bijou Kanyambo, the 2021 Outstanding Senior Award winners. Take it over, ladies.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, all. My name is Amani Bogan, class of 2021, and I'm honored to be presenting this next award with my classmate and colleague, Bijou Kanyambo, class of 2021. The Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society Outstanding Senior Award recognizes an African-American graduating senior who exemplifies academic achievement, excellent leadership ability, positive servant leadership, and a demonstrated desire to strengthen the bond between current students and alumni. Bijou.
As a first-generation college student and Afro-Caribbean woman, Dana Foster, paired with her liberal arts education, has molded her into a thoughtful, driven, and well-rounded individual. Dana believes in doing meaningful work that aligns with her personal goals and making an impact in the community around her. Dana is the true embodiment of a creative-minded go-getter. Dana became a business owner during her undergraduate career, worked in 5 departments on campus for workday positions, and was an integral executive board member for the Caribbean Student Association. After Bates, her career interests include financial services, digital marketing, and public relations. In addition, she aims to provide support for low-income and systematically oppressed communities by combining her interest in American studies and anthropology.
It is with great pleasure that we award Dana the Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society Outstanding Senior Award. And with that, I will pass it off to Lance.
Thank you so much, and congratulations, Dana. So impressive. So Lance Metier, class of 85, and I'm a current Bates Trace trustee. Tonight, I have the honor of presenting the Stella James Distinguished Service Award to Dean James Reese. This award honors a non-alumni member, faculty, or staff of the Bates College community, past or present, who has made outstanding contributions to the Black Bates community. Awarded to an individual recognized as a true supporter or ally for services provided to minority students through personal involvement and who holistically addresses the quality of life at Bates. The award was established in the name of Stella James Sims, class of 1874. She is the first African-American woman to graduate from Bates College. We're actually fortunate enough to have members of the Sims family on this Zoom, and you honor us with your presence and support of this important award. Dean James Reese. He graduated from high school in Jersey. What's going on with Jersey? A number of our awardees have Jersey roots, and then graduated from Middlebury College in 1977. In his senior year, he was the president of the Black Student Union and captain of the men's basketball team. 3 months after graduating college, he was hired by Bates as the Associate Dean of Students, and he has never looked back. Thousands of him know him simply as Dean Reese, James, or the dean with that sweet jump shot that he drained in my face on a number of occasions, but I was always able to post him down low. In addition to being the keeper of Bates's oral history, Dean Reese has been an advisor to thousands of students over the years. Most notably, he has served as a mentor to international and Black students. The gratitude of hundreds of these students is poignantly reflected by the gifts of art from all around the globe. I mean, have you all ever seen his office? It's like a museum. As I was thinking about Dean Reese and the impact he continues to have, I thought of the Jackson 5's classic, "I'll be there," and that I'm going to stop. I'm not a good singer, but whenever you need me, I'll be there. He has this uncanny ability to know when and where he's needed. He was there for me shortly before my graduation when I had a momentary lapse in judgment, shall we say. Nothing severe, mind you, but a departure from expectations that Dean Reese and other campus leaders had for me. He set me straight. He was also there for me when I needed a compelling letter of recommendation for my business school applications. I'll be there, James Reese. Those lucky to have been on campus with Dean Reese know him to always be running from place to place, including serving as the official airport shuttle for many. When asked about one of his happiest moments, James said, "My family and I have several happy memories of making the plane when we thought we wouldn't." There are many students I work with, including one I spoke to the other day, who called to say, "We made it," because of James's shuttle service. In reflecting on his time at Bates, Dean Reese says it's been tremendous in so many ways. One of the foremost is supporting, advising, mentoring, and most importantly, being amid the enjoyable associations I've had with BIPOC and international students. My upraising, schooling, and mentoring informed, taught, and guided me to take and relish my responsibilities very seriously and try to be very effective in efforts, services, and outcomes for everyone. I credit my parents for that instillment, and I've known and realized of much of what they wanted to experience, accomplish, and give. James's parents at 95 and 98 couldn't join us tonight. So James, please let them know that, put simply, we love and respect you more than you can possibly imagine. It is with great pleasure I award Dean James Reese the Stella James Distinguished Service Award. Congratulations. And with that, I believe I am passing it back over to Chuck, perhaps?
Passing it over to me, Lance.
All right, Eric, take it away.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that, and congratulations to all the award recipients. Before we jump into our social, I want to do a quick thanks to many of the people that enabled us to put this on. First and foremost, Eliza, Lorenzo, and Jaleesa de los Santos of Bates College worked tirelessly and around the clock to make sure that we had the proper visuals, the proper Zoom channels, the proper panelists on this call. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done, as well as Benjamin Robinson, Dr. Benjamin Robinson. Without his work and tireless effort to launching the Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society, we would not be here. And so we thank all of you, thank President Spencer for joining this call, and thank all of the recipients and those who were able to join on the Zoom call, as well as the folks who are giving out the awards. Thank you very much for all of the tireless work that you've done and the continued support that you provide for the Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society. And unlike many other esteemed award shows, we do not have an exclusive after party. And what we would love to do is invite all of you that have joined on Zoom for our after social to get to know one another and potentially speak to some of the panelists and the award recipients on our next call that I believe our IT director and secretary Chuck James has put in. And hopefully we'll be able to see you on the next Zoom. But on behalf of the Benjamin Mays Black Alumni Society, welcome all of you and thank all of you for joining. Thank you all the panelists, and looking forward to seeing you on the Zoom call that's happening right now.